Time to begin. Everyone, thanks for showing up. It's a pretty good turnout right here. So, my name's Sean Oster. I'm a program manager on the Silverlight team. I'm part of the team that brought you Silverlight onto Windows Phone. And hopefully everyone here today is coming to see what's coming in Silverlight for Windows Phone. And that should be expanded really to Windows Phone in the Mango release. So what are we going to talk about today? Why are you guys here? And why should you stick around? So first, I'm just going to reiterate where we are today. So what are we actually shipping today? Sort of a reminder, what the platform is, where we're going. And then I'm going to talk about what's coming next in Mango. That's obviously the exciting thing on why you're here. And then after that, or as I'm going through that, I'm going to point out things that are unique to the phone versus things that already exists in some form in Silverlight 4 on the desktop. So some of these features I'm going to talk about, you can already go out into documentation on MSDN, look it up and say, oh, that's how it's going to work. And you can do some prototyping on the desktop. Other things, you're going to have to wait for the developer tools, for the beta to drop. Who here is actively doing application development? Nice, that's a good majority of you guys. And who here has done any Silverlight 4 development? Okay, fewer people, which is sort of good, because I'm going to cover some of the Silverlight 4 features for those of you that don't know what's coming. So what is Silverlight today? And another question, or another reason I'm giving you this slide is, sometimes when you hear new products coming out, everyone stops developing. Everyone goes into this hold and wait pattern, which we don't want people to do. You want to get that marketplace, with as many awesome apps as possible out there. So just a reminder of things we already have today. Today the platform is Silverlight 3 desktop, plus some cool things that are unique to the phone, minus some things that didn't make sense. It's a great networking stack. It's all port 80 based. It's Silverlight if you want a third-party application, or XNA if you want a third-party application. And obviously a great media stack. That's really Silverlight's sort of crown jewel, is it's great media. Another thing that we did for the phone, for Silverlight, is it's first class, meaning there's a lot of features that work exactly the same way in Silverlight as they do in the native applications. The last thing you want is people to say, but why does it look different, or why does it act different than, say, the SMS client? You want them to be as close as functionality as possible. That brought us things like manipulation events, which are unique to the phone. The web browser control, while not unique, was unique in the fact that it used the exact same web browser engine that's running on the phone that's the default web browser. And of course, performance. We made a great start with performance. I'm sure anyone that's doing development knows that we have or had some ways to go for performance. But we did bring hardware-accelerated media, hardware-accelerated graphics. That's what we're shipping today. We also created this new thing called a render thread for the current version. That render thread allows you to take the graphics and process them in a background thread, kick them over to the hardware, do your composition, your layering of all the textures, and then push it to the screen when it's ready. We also added cache composition, which is a great performance benefit, saying, hey, there are these cool pixels, you're not going to regenerate them, they're going to stick around, let's cache them versus forcing you to regenerate it over and over and over. So that's sort of what we have today. It's already a great platform. Definitely continue developing applications on it. There's like 13,000 plus applications out there, which is great. And with Mango, we want to see that number just explode even more. So here's the reason you guys are in this session. What are you getting? Show me the goodies. What's the fun part? So just like the current version is Silverlight 3 plus some stuff, minus some stuff, Mango is going to be Silverlight 4 plus some stuff, minus some stuff. And I'll go over in depth on that in the next slide. So the big one that's coming is sockets. Who here has been waiting for sockets? I want to hear a big yes for sockets. Yes. There's so many apps that I've been waiting to write because of this one feature. If no other feature shipped in Mango, I would have been fairly pleased if we just had this one. Another thing is, before, if you wanted to make a third-party app, it was either Silverlight or XNA. You had to pick and choose. You want awesome, 3D graphics, XNA. You want a great, UI platform. You want great, MVVM support, Silverlight. Now with Mango, you can intermingle them, so you can create some really awesome stuff that way. And I'll touch on that a little bit later. Webcam, You have this great phone, there's a webcam on it. So we brought the Silverlight 4 webcam API into Mango. So we also have the webcam, you also have microphones, so you can do capture there, and it's all the Silverlight 4 API. So if you already know the Silverlight 4 API, you can use it, or if you find a component or some code samples, you can start using that. First class, we're extending the concept of first class. So what's that mean? Well, as Mango starts shipping, we're going to ship in a bunch of markets, a multitude of markets out there, so everyone can start using these features. A big question we get is, hey, I have my phone in my native country, but the keyboard is still in English. What gives? How am I not important that I don't have my own keyboard? We've addressed that. We've broadened the number of keyboards out there, and Silverlight will support those. Control improvements in general. Again, bringing those controls, closer to the native experience. And the web browser control, which is still there, is now using IE9 under the covers. So everything that the native web browser control can render, you can render in Silverlight. And performance. Like I said, we knew that we weren't quite there with the current version that's shipping. So we attacked performance. One of my fellow PMs is, every day he comes in, he fights for performance features. He just, till he's red in the face, and it's shown. It's really paid off. We've done things like improve list box scrolling. So anyone that has to work with the list knows it can be stuttery and jerky. We've addressed that. Memory. Everyone knows there's a 90 meg memory cap on your apps. If you're doing just a few things in, say, a panorama application, you can run out of memory quickly. We've done changes that reduce memory anywhere from 25 to 30%. Just out the gate, working set has been improved 25 to 30%. And last but not least, profiler instrumentation. We've dropped a bunch of markers into the code so that you can use the really great new profiling tools to actually profile and see where your application is slow, see what's going on, see what's consuming all the memory. So we enabled that integration story. So these are the areas I'm going to sort of touch on. These are the broad little overview. We're going to go through each one, what's new, what's cool, what's fun. Talk about general Silverlight 4 improvements, the basic input-output, such as text and manipulation, various controls, how we beefed them up. The networking, sockets obviously is wonderful. Some media and graphics, and the Silverlight XNA, and then we're going to touch a little bit on performance. So what does bringing Silverlight 4 actually get you? Now, one thing that's not in the slide, but one of the main reasons we're bringing it into Mango is the fact that, one, there's parity. A lot of questions we hear is, why do you have Silverlight 3 in the phone, but Silverlight 4 in the wild? So this will just help address that gap right there. But another one is Silverlight 4 brought the tech stack. If everyone knows Silverlight 4, there's a ton of work that was done to support multiple languages. And we'll touch on that, but that's really a big reason why Silverlight 4 came over. There's also a new parser in it. This parser is much more XAML compliant. It's a closer sibling to the WPF parser. So you just start grabbing code snippets, and you're like, why doesn't that work in Silverlight? This helps bridge that gap. Some of the smaller things that don't get as much press but are really great features are things called implicit styles. And I'll show those off, but those are a way to say, I want all buttons or all hyperlinks to look one way. You don't have to say, I have a style, it's called super awesome button, and then apply a super awesome button to every single button through your application. Data binding enhancements. Again, if you have written even a medium-sized application, you're doing a ton of data binding. We added some convenience features to data binding to make it easier to format your data, to work with default values of data, and I'll show you how to do that. Then iCommand support. Does anyone here do MVVM or use one of those frameworks? I see some nods, good. So anyone that uses those frameworks knows that in Silverlight 3 there were some hacks to get commanding to work. Commanding is a way of saying, instead of wiring up a button click to go do something, you have your view model object return an object that implements this interface, and then you bind that to your button. And then when you click your button, it says, hey, view model, what do you want me to do when they click? I'm bound to you, you can tell me. And now your view model can drive the action versus wiring up some spaghetti C# code in your code behind. So what's not there? There's all this great stuff, but what didn't we bring? Printing. At one point the slide was funnier because I could say printing, who needs to print from the phone? But we know of some competitors that did some printing, so it's not as funny anymore. Sorry about that. Mouse wheel support. Obviously, there's a mouse wheel on your phone. Don't need to bring that. Right-click, again, a little difficult to right-click, and drag and drop. That's the concept just doesn't really exist on the phone. So let's actually see some code. Let's see which one of his keyboards will work. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do, I'm just going to show, let's blend. There we go. I want to show implicit styles. How do they work? A quick little demo on that. So if you can see over here in my preview, these are standard hyperlinks. If we can scroll down, they're just straight little hyperlinks. We'll minimize that. You drop them, drag them, that's the default style. Well, I want all of them to look the same way throughout my entire application. Say I have a custom color, I always do, like purple or whatever. So I could either make a style, then apply it here, one-off, or I'm going to pop over to my app.xaml. I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to take my style. I have it all coded up, drop it. So I'm going to do a little quick formatting. Okay, so basically, like a normal style, I'm saying my target type is a hyperlink button. I'm setting 3 different properties on it to make it big and blue. The one thing I'm not doing is giving it a name. So if I can come over here to my main page, whoop, there it is. You can see the designer has already picked it up. And now they're blue, they're much more touchable, they're much more interactive. And then, so this is the designer, and then I can deploy. Let's go emulator. And voila, it works there as well, as you would expect. Though this is beta, so I can't make any promises about everything quite working all the time. So I'll pop back over. So that's implicit styles. It's a simple little thing, but it's sort of fun to use. The next thing I want to show is data binding. Again, there's small things here, but they can save a ton of keystrokes. So let's go over to our data binding page. And here I'm just doing something pretty standard, pretty simple. I'm binding a bunch of text blocks to a view model. In this case, it's so lightweight I wouldn't even call it a view model. I'm just I'm saying price is bound over to this text block. I have developer, I have website. Now one of the things that you end up doing is you write a bunch of custom value converters that sit there and they grab a value and they munge it into the right display format. And it's a lot of code. It's mind-numbing. So what we've done is we've actually built those into the box. So say for price, I know that I want the string format to always be currency. I should add it right there. I don't have to do a whole formatter. We get put in the box for you. So I can run that, show you a sample. So it's, as you can see, it's $0.99. I come back over here, show you the code. Oh, these hotkeys aren't working for some reason. But that's okay. And you can see when I new up the object, I just did 0.99, and it's a double. It's not, I don't have the $sign in there anywhere. So another thing I have is developer and website, but I'm not setting them to anything. Now, wouldn't it be great if instead of having to put the default values here, I could put it where they actually belong in the UI? So I can go back to the UI, come down here. Let's say, so what should we do when, say, developer's not set? Well, you can have what's called a fallback value. In this case, we're going to say, no developer. Another thing you can also have, and so this will engage if your data context isn't even set at all. Another thing you can also have is if it's null. So your data context is set, but it's actually there. We can say, oh wait, where'd it go? That's interesting. Where did it go? Well, for now, trust me, it does exist. Oh, sorry, target null. Let's say when it's null, we want it to be, is null. Close that out, close that out. Make sure it's not grumpy. There. Run it. Flip over. So is null. Basically, I didn't set any string in my view model, and it defaulted to is null. Now my fallback, my fallback up here didn't engage because there is a data context. So it didn't have anything. It didn't say, oh, the data context doesn't exist. It does. I'm just not set to a string at that point. So again, these are just small little things you can do when you're data binding, when you're building up your UI that make it much easier to work with your, with your UI layer. So let's go back over. And talk about input. Now let's drill it down to some of the core fundamentals. So input, with text, we've done IME integration. Now IME, for anyone that works with languages besides English or any Latin-based language, knows that when you're inputting things like Japanese or Korean, there's a bunch of different character sets, a thing called complex script that you have to work with, that you want to get, instead of just one character, entire patterns, entire sets of words into your text box, into your, as input. Well, and that's called the input method editor, and that's being built into the core OS of the platform. Obviously, in Silverlight, you want to be able to pick up on that. You want to integrate. It comes, for free in your text box. There's no special language you have to do. You don't have to set anything magical. If the keyboard is in the right language, you'll see the input method editor for whatever, for Japanese or Korean or Chinese. Also, there's text box events. Unless you're doing a localized application, you might not care about this as much, but you really should. I do encourage people to localize their applications as much as possible. Really try to do a first-class experience for everyone, because as we start pushing to more markets, that's more money, that's more eyeballs, that's more feedback, that's just more goodness all the way around. So one of the things that we're actually bringing are 3 sets of text box events that will tell you when people are working with this IME. So as they're selecting their complex script, you'll see it, and then you can actually do things like autocorrect and autocomplete and word guessing and all that type of stuff. Another one is touch. Now, a bunch of people have said, great, you have manipulation, but I just want to know if someone touched my rectangle. That's it. That's all I need. Well, we heard that, and so we brought tap, double tap, and hold. Tap is nice because tap is on UI element. We've always had like a click, but it was only in button base. It didn't really help you out for a rectangle. So now we actually have it on UI element. Another good thing about double tap is with double tap, we actually use the system-defined double tap timeout. Same thing with hold. Like when you press and hold to get a context menu. Again, a lot of developers, when they rolled their own controls, had to guess. It's like they would press and hold on the start menu and go, oh, that was about 200 milliseconds. Or they look on a web page and say, oh, they say it's 300 milliseconds. But now we're actually always pulling the system-defined constants for you. So just, again, rounding out the platform, and these are things that are unique just to Silverlight on Windows Phone. So that's getting stuff in. That's, obviously text input and touch. Now and then there's output. This is where I was talking about the Silverlight 4 text rendering stack. As you can see in the screenshot and a little app I'll do in a second, this is being rendered from right to left. And if anyone can actually read this, they'll know that the characters are actually shaped the correct direction. If you try this today, you'll get the text, it'll render, but the characters will be flipped, they'll be mirror imaged, which obviously does not go over well in your localized application, which does not obviously lead to more income. Another great little feature, and this is bringing us closer to first-class parity, is the red squiggly. It's just internally known as the red squiggly. So that's just when you have a misspelled word, same as in Word, same as you see in the platform. And now in Silverlight text box, when you have a misspelled word, you'll get the little red squiggly. Okay, so let's take some of those concepts and bring them together. So the first thing I want to do is actually show off the tap events to show how easy they are. We're still running over here, back that up. Go to translate page. So one of the things we'd like to do, here's my little sample app here, is say when you double tap on the text box, you want to clear the content. Just a quick and easy way to do it. So we're going to come over here. To say this text box right there. And this is something you obviously couldn't do before. You'd have to use manipulation events to wire it all up. And say double tap, new handler. We'll grab this name. Flip over. This should be it right here. Yep. And we'll just clear out the text. We'll run that. It's instinctual to hit F5, and it's not working on here. It's a weird muscle thing. Translate. So, and this is a simple app. I just wrote about 8 lines of code to hook up to the Bing Translator service. And before this worked, we'll see if we work with network service. Nope. I'll show you on the phone. It does work there. But Arabic didn't. In fact, let's just pop over there right now. Okay. Close that down. Go device. Make sure we're unlocked. Make sure I don't show everyone my PIN. Okay. Deploying. Hopefully everyone can see that. Now we'll go to translate. Chinese, translate. There. As you can see, it's actually that. You can do that today. Arabic, on the other hand, you can't. And this is actually using 2 things. This is using, the underlying text is doing proper character shaping. One thing that I'm also doing is setting flow direction. There's a funny bit of code in here where I used to have to fake this. Now you don't have to. I used to set text alignment. Now you can say the flow direction, either text flows left to right or right to left. Again, emerging markets, pushing out to other markets, huge markets. This is something that's very important to keep in mind. But I no longer care where the pool is, because today was not the best weather out there for pool. I can double click and I clear it. Again, it's that easy to hook up the events and to smudge my phone. Okay. So another thing, actually, let's pop over to the actual slide. Okay. So with controls, what are we doing about controls? What's cool about controls? A big ask was for the rich text box. So rich text box exists in Silverlight 4, and it's a huge time saver if you're doing something like, a Twitter feed, and half the things in there are links. You want them to be touchable and navigate out, and a lot of people have had to use a wrap panel and text blocks, and they hand carve their own sort of rich text control, where you just want a string of text, and you want one of those words to be bold. It's amazing how much code you have to write to make that happen. So we're bringing the rich text box from Silverlight 4 to Mango. Now, one caveat is that it's read-only. The process of actually making it editable was quite a lot of work to actually make that happen, and just didn't fit in the time frame. It was like, they want sockets or editable rich text box. We went with sockets. So with that, we actually it's read-only, though that does cover a huge amount of cases and amount of scenarios. As I mentioned, the web browser uses IE9. Another thing is the clipboard API. Hopefully everyone here is on the Nodo update by now. Everyone's found the copy and paste. Everyone's enjoying that? No? Yes? I'll take that as a yes. So one thing, just as a segue, for everyone using copy and paste on their phone, you can paste multiple times. I'm not sure if everyone knows, but if you see that little bar above the keyboard, if you slide it out, the little paste icon reappears. I've had several people say, why can't I repaste over and over and over? Is that coming from Mango? I'm like, it's already there. It's just a little bit hard to find. So now, but with Nodo, that's built into the text box, but you can't do it programmatically. We're bringing that ability to do it programmatically into your own code. So now you can mimic some of the UI, such as in an SMS, you can press and hold on a text message and get the copy context menu. You can now do that in your applications too. For anyone using Viewbox, that's actually moved from the SDK over into the core. And we're also bringing some fixes for Silverlight Toolkit, that will also release in the same time frame as Mango. And so the toolkit's still out there. There were some rumors for a while that the toolkit was going away. It's not. The toolkit is near and dear to my heart and to everyone's heart because it's a great way to ship controls. So let's show off a few of those controls. So we'll stay in our translator app and say one of the things we want to do is actually add the ability to mimic the copy and paste. So let's make sort of a press and hold type of menu on the translated text, or actually the text up here. So I'll come over here, and we'll say, when they press and hold, we want to show a context menu. Well, context menu already has the press and hold semantics in there, so we can just grab a little bit of XAML, throw that over here, do a little bit of formatting. Yep. So now let's create a click handler. Pop over to the code. And we want to actually, when you press and hold, we want to show the word copy, then we actually want to do something. What we want to do in this case is we actually want to take the clipboard and set text to whatever the let's see, what was it? Translated text. Okay, so we'll run that. Let's go to the phone again. It's just a little bit cooler on the phone. So I go back to the translation app. Let's translate to something, let's say Russian. So at this point, we can press and hold, get our menu, say copy, and I can actually clear that, and then paste. And as you can see, I'm pasting the Russian. That's how you interact with the clipboard to put data on there and to move it back and forth. So that's clipboard. Now, rich text box. Let's show a little example of that. So to work with that, now this is an interesting one because it's not as simple as binding to text. So it's one thing to watch out for, that when you're working with the rich text box, which is a great control, you do have to do just a little bit of work. Not as much as you used to have to, but still you have to do a little bit more. So the way a rich text box works is actually it's built up of blocks. It's a little bit like HTML. You have blocks. Inside each block, you have inline containers. Those inlines can be hyperlinks. They can be other elements, like a button. They can just be normal text. So we'll say demoed by. So demoed by me, small text down there. So I want my name to actually be a hyperlink. Now before you'd have to piece together a bunch of different controls. Now I can just simply say hyperlink. So I want and just like a normal hyperlink, you do have to set the target name if you're going external to blank. And then we want to get the navigate URI. Let's go here. Give it the text. As you can see, it's the same height, it's correctly formatted, it's in line, it's everything you'd expect from rich text. This one we can actually run on emulator. And you can see I can click, and we crash. That's again because I'm running a beta version. But it does work. It's on a later build that actually does work, I can guarantee you that. But that's how it actually comes together. And then the browser would load up, And then if it had to have crashed, the back stack is actually maintained. So if I hit back, it would go back correctly to my application. Okay. Now let's go back over to PowerPoint. So networking, again, sockets, it's a huge feature. Hopefully a bunch of you have a bunch of applications out there that you're thinking of enabling with sockets, that'll actually light up once this comes out. I know there's a bunch of applications such as Sonos that I really would love for my home because I own a Sonos system. They needed something called SSDP. It helps you find devices. Now with this, with the work we've done, you can actually do it. Not only do you have access to the TCP stack, you also have TCP, you have UDP unicast, and UDP multicast. If I had more Mango devices on me, I could show you a really cool demo where you use UDP multicast to discover and declare your device, so you don't even need a server if you're all on the same subnet. If you're all going through the same router and you pull out your phone, you can discover each other without needing an expensive cloud in the sky, which is nice for local area type of games. So I'll show you a little bit of socket code. We'll see if the socket server on the other end is actually running. But even if it's not, I can walk you through the code, show you how pretty simple it is to actually go through all of that. Other improvements around networking, sockets tends to take the spotlight, but two big things is that you can now change and access the full headers collection. I don't know if anyone's had to work with backend servers and you're sending packets out there and information. There's some settings that you could not change in the headers collection. You could try as much as you want. We'd throw an exception. We've changed that. So if any client is blocked on that or your apps are blocked on that, please let them know. This is huge for enterprise as well. Another one that's a change that we've made, sort of a breaking change, is web client actually now returns on the originating thread. So for all you developers out there, this is important to remember that wherever your web client requests are, if they're on a background thread, make sure you wrap them in a dispatcher.begin invoke. The classic way to marshal back to the UI thread. So if your return is doing anything on the UI. So, and that is quirked. So if your 7.0 apps are running, they'll continue to run, but once you recompile them from Mango, they may start acting different. And this could be one reason if you're using web client. So let's do a little bit of sockets. Load up socket app. Ah, nice and speedy. That's the power of an SSD right there. So we'll see if we're lucky today. So this is a pretty simple little chat application here. You have a name, you'd have your message. As you can see, port 4530, not port 80, which is a huge thing. On the server we want to go to. Let's see if that actually works. Again, not the easiest thing when bits are changing. But I can show you the code and show you how actually easy it is to get to. So in our load, all we do is we create a DNS endpoint. So as you can see, we're just saying here's the IP address and here's the port you want it to run on. You set up the socket connection itself. Say the family type, the socket type, and the really interesting part here is the protocol type. Again, the fact that we have TCP and UDP, and that UDP is unicast and multicast. But we'll just stick with TCP. You basically create up your event handler so when you actually connect, and so you can actually do respond when you're connected. So then when you connect, it's an async event like most good things in Silverlight. So we will then go down to what happens when we actually complete. We basically just grab the buffer, parse it, do whatever we want with it. Here we show a string. At that point, it's just basic, throwing strings back and forth. It's as simple as connecting, handling the connection, looking for error codes that your server's bringing down. When you receive information from the socket, what you do with it. Here we're just pulling the data out of the buffer, putting it into a string. And then we're taking that string, and since this is all in background threads, we're dispatcher beginning invoking it. That's how you, again, marshal back up to the UI thread, taking it back to the UI thread so we can update our text box. As you can see, the amount of code here, and we're doing some good, being good developers and doing some good catching and good housekeeping here. But as you can see, there is not much text for doing basic sockets connection. This is just a simple, some UI helper methods, some button clicks, reconnecting to the server, getting some more data, resending it. It's very easy to work with sockets. I've had a few people ask me, is this difficult? Well, my customers think it's difficult. Do I have to go and buy a third-party library? If the third-party library is awesome, please use it. But you don't have to use it. It's not voodoo to actually get coded. So media and graphics. What did we do for media and graphics? Again, those are cornerstones of Silverlight. What's the fun stuff we did here? One thing is the webcam API. There's actually 2 camera APIs on the phone. One more geared towards taking pictures, and that has more of a pull model. You go and query it for when you want bits. And then the Silverlight 4 webcam model is more of a push model. It's event-based. So every time, every frame, we say, hey, there's data. Hey, there's data. Hey, there's data. But it's the same Silverlight 4 web API that we had. This is another area where we've added some really cool stuff that we didn't have in desktop. So in desktop, you have what's called an audio sync. You write your own audio sync to do your own audio processing. Or you can write a video sync. That's how you do your own video processing. Well, a common scenario that we encountered when we were talking about this feature was, I don't care about any of that. I really don't. I just want to encode a video and send it to YouTube. That is all I want to do. So we're like, okay, let's make it easy. We added a new type of sync called a file sync. File sync, when you hook it up to your camera capture, and I'll show you how to do that, it encodes directly to MP4. It goes into ISOStore as a single file, and you can grab that file and then push it wherever you want. So doing your basic YouTube or Facebook video upload scenario is super simple now. Another thing that we did is we've improved the battery usage for video. So before, if you were watching Netflix, depending on what you're watching and the phone you had, it could last, let's make up, it could last, say, 4 hours. You'd be watching it, and then your phone would die, especially if you're flying from Seattle to here like I did. That's almost a 5-hour flight. Couldn't quite squeeze in a full movie. So what we did is we tried to get this in last time, but we couldn't quite fit it in, is we enabled scalar mode. So if we detect that if you met a certain list of criteria, which I'll mention, then we take the video and we actually send it to 3/4 size to hardware, and then we scale it up on the screen. Now, the video quality, because that's usually the first question, is actually better in some cases. It has smoother gradients, there's less dithering, it actually looks better. Putting 2 side by side, people almost always pick the non-scaled version as the one that's not as good. The more important thing is you can get up to 1.5 hours extra battery out of this. So if you're Netflix, if you're doing a bunch of trailers, if you're doing anything with heavy video, this is a huge boon. This is like 1.5 hours extra of video of battery life. So there's a few criteria on how you actually make this happen. So when do we kick into scalar mode? We kick into scalar mode when your media element that's playing the video is screen aligned. So that means it's actually on a pixel boundary. So the pixel's on the screen, that you're not on some sub-pixel, you haven't moved it over through some kind of translate transform. That you're right aligned, so that means that you're at 90 degrees. You don't have, it's not some spinning video. And also that you are screen aligned, right aligned, pixel aligned. Oh, and so also you can't apply a crazy transformation to it. So if you have it even off a little bit, not only does that throw it on a sub-pixel boundary, it ends up, you're always constantly having to take those pixels and then readjust them, recompute the math on where they should be on the screen. That will blow you out of scalar mode. So as long as it's pretty much like a full screen video or just a small screen video at your basic landscape, you're great. You're going to kick into scalar mode and get that extra battery life. One more thing to watch out for is if you throw any opacity over it, that will also kick you out of scalar mode. The reason that is now you're taking 2 textures and you're having to composite them together. As soon as you do that, you can't do the cool 3/4 in hardware and scale up, because you have to take the full frame and composite with your opacity. So again, don't bring opacity on top of your video while it's playing. So that's a big one for battery life. Another one is we enable 32 bits per pixel mode with graphics. So if anyone has any app out there that has gradients, you'd probably know that in the emulator it looks great, it looks wonderful, and then you kick it out to the phone, and you get this chunky banding. You know, the screenshot, hopefully it sort of shows you, but it's sort of chunked up. It's not even dithered, it's just these big blocks of color. And the reason that is we take your image, push it to hardware, you know, full 32 bits, but because we're not telling the hardware that that it needs to be in 32-bit mode, it's saying, well, you gave me all this data, I'm just going to reduce it to 16 bits. 16 bits per pixel. I don't care how I'm going to do it, I'm just going to have to force it. So you get banding. It drops off between the different color ranges. What we've done is we've added a new mode to your application where you can push it to 32 bits per pixel. You can say, whatever screen resolution or whatever bit plane your phone supports, and a lot of them support 18, 18 and higher, whatever it supports, take that image, give it to hardware, tell the hardware what to do, and then the hardware will say, sweet, I know how to go from 32 bits down to 18. I can dither that for you. So you get much smoother gradients. So we go from blockiness to smooth. And we've had a bunch of complaints about this one saying, why do my images look all weird and blocky? This is how you address it. One big thing with this, though, is there is a small performance hit because there is more work going on to do the dithering. So if your application doesn't absolutely need it, I wouldn't kick it to it by default. Evaluate it on a per-need basis. And last is VideoBrush. VideoBrush existed in Silverlight 3, existed in Silverlight 4. Now you have it in Mango, basically. VideoBrush is key because it's how you do the preview for your camera capture. And I can show you a little bit of this stuff right here. So first up, let's show you the webcam, because that's a little bit more fun. Come over here, go to the webcam. So I have just a pretty basic shell here. There isn't much going on. So I'm going to show you how you'd build up a very basic sort of YouTube video camera capture app. So I have two elements right here. One is the media element. Media element is where you would obviously do your playback of the video. Another one is just a straight rectangle. Now, if anyone knows what brushes are, you just apply any brush to any element. A video brush just says it's another type of brush, but it happens to be that the texture, instead of a color or a gradient, is a playing video. So that's how you get a video preview, is you pipe video through the video brush, you apply the video brush to a rectangle. So these are just the two elements that we need. Let's go over to code. Let's bring out our magic snippets. So the first thing we have is you have a capture source. Source is sort of the main object you use to control what you capture, how you capture, what resolution you capture, the audio you captured in. The next key component is the sync. File sync, audio sync, video sync. You connect those to the capture, and then that sort of completes the whole package. If you wrote your own video sync or audio sync, you can do audio and video processing. With this simple example, we just wanted to grab the file and take those bits and shove them into ISOstore. So we create a capture source that we're going to actually use to capture with. The file sync is where the file comes from, and then we have a file name, which we call it audience.mp4. So now when they click start, we actually start capturing, we're going to set up our capture source. If it doesn't exist, create a new one, and I'm going to say, give me the default video that the camera supports, and then give me the default audio that it supports. There's two different video resolutions right now that you can actually capture to. But I'm just saying, give me the default. Whatever you have, give that to me. And you can query and get what the different video capture modes are, and then you can show that to the user and say, hey, what do you want, high res or low res? But right now, we're just going to go with default. Then we're going to create our file sync itself, which actually pulls the data and encodes it and drops into ISOstore. And then we're going to hook them together. We're going to say, hey, sync, your capture source is the one we created earlier. And then we're just going to set the name we actually want it to encode to. And again, this goes to ISOstore. And once it's there, it's all your normal ISOstore code. So that now we've set it up, and that's great, and we could actually start capturing from here. but we want people to be able to see what they're capturing. So here's where the video brush comes in handy. So we grab the video, we create a new video brush. We say it's source instead of a media element. For anyone who's used set source before, instead of a media element, we're saying it's the actual capture source. It's the thing that's pulling the video. And then we're just applying that to the rectangle. We're saying, hey, fill that with this brush. And now that we have sort of our little scene set up, how do we actually make it all go? Well, that's as easy as capture source, start. And now we're capturing. Now we're capturing and encoding right to your phone. Well, that's wonderful, but at some point you want it to stop. And again, that's as easy as capture source dot stop. And last but not least, you want to take that file and play it back. So this code, it's a little bit more involved, but not that much. So we take the preview, don't need it anymore, we hide it. We take the video player, we show it, because that's obviously what you want to show the video back on. We go to ISO store, we look for the file, there it is. Does the file exist? Yes. We open it as a stream, take that stream, and set it to video player. Video player is just a straight media element. Here we're saying the source is the stream that we loaded off a disk. Do some good housekeeping, catch any exceptions, but that's all it takes to start playing back what we just captured. So let's see how this works. Go over to Wolf Vision, deploy. Camera capture. So it's always interesting to demo the camera because I only have one Wolf Vision, so you can't see, you don't want to capture the actual felt underneath there. So what we're going to try to do is capture a video of you guys and then play it back. Hopefully everyone signed the waiver at the door. So, big smiles, big applause, woo, camera capture. Ah, there we go. That's the cheap way to get applause, by the way. So then we stop it. Oh, and then we cry. So again, beta version right here. The code does work. I made the mistake of updating some of my bits, and this is what you see, live and in the raw product being developed. So on a good day, this actually works. I did the same demo at Mix. If anyone wants to go watch that video, you can see for yourself that the same code actually does exist. One small thing to note is that as we're increasing the phone, adding more things you can do, we're adding new capabilities. Anyone who submitted an app knows there's the capabilities that you have to set on in your manifest file. There's a new one in there called Cap Camera. Make sure you have that added to your manifest so you can actually submit your app and not have it fail, the whole ingestion process. So that's the code for camera capture. Apologies, I couldn't actually show it to you. Now, the 32 bits per pixel, how do you actually kick it over from 16 to 32? Again, that is as easy as coming over here, going to Properties, going to the WM app manifest, going all the way over. As you can see, by default, it's 16. Just to show you what that looks like. Not sure if you can actually tell, but it's sort of chunky and banded at this point. Come back over, and we just flip that to 32. Save it. If you don't have this attribute there, it does default to 16, same as 7.0. Not sure. Can you guys even tell that there was a difference there? Yeah. Well, see me afterwards. I can show you the magic of the dithering. So that is media, or the media and graphics. flip back over here. Silverlight XNA. So I know we have a bunch of Silverlight developers. Do we have XNA developers? Nice. So for those of you that don't know, XNA is this awesome, rich 3D graphics platform to make really great games, really smooth frame rates, just really impressive stuff. You can just do amazing things with just a little bit of code. And then you go to do your scoreboard and you pull your hair out. This is because rendering text in a game, well, it's not text. It's not a text rendering system. What it is, they're just bitmaps. They're just images. They're sprites. So your leaderboard, if you want to localize that, you are having to ship every character that you might ever want in that leaderboard as an image. It's amazing that such a simple thing can actually be just as frustrating as the entire game. So along comes Silverlight with its awesome text rendering engine and say, well, I want both. I want a little bit of XNA on one page for my main game, and then my next page, I want pure Silverlight. I want a leaderboard. I want some P2P connection, so I want to have a list of all the servers in the area using the UDP multicast. You don't want to write all that in XNA. It's much more fun to write it in Silverlight because it's much easier. So now with Mango, you can actually do that. You can mix and match. And I strongly encourage anyone who is maybe shy of XNA to start looking at it because there's some really great 3D stuff in there. It's also, with this mixing and matching, you can do augmented reality applications. Hopefully some of you people are working on some of those because those are some awesome applications to write. When you're doing augmented reality, you want to draw 3D objects, but you also want text. Well, how do you actually combine a 3D XNA object with Silverlight? Well, that's the next level of Silverlight and XNA interop. It's pretty much element level. It's saying, I have this element, this is XNA, this is an XNA scene, but I'm going to sort of drop in Silverlight controls and Silverlight text into areas of my application. I don't actually have any code for this. I don't want to steal the thunder of the Silverlight XNA guys, and honestly, their code's much better, but I do have a little sample to show you. A few of you may already see the little teapot. But this is the page level interaction between Silverlight and XNA. This is straight Silverlight. Silverlight, you can obviously tell it's the basic layout. There's a button, all Silverlight. And as soon as I tap, I navigate to another page. This is an XNA page. This teapot is not the easiest thing to do in Silverlight today. So that's all that's all XNA. But then you have these little buttons. Hopefully you can see them. These little buttons are all Silverlight buttons, and that's the element level interaction. And again, I'm not sure if you can see it, but there's actually Chinese characters up on these buttons. And that's the thing that if you're an XNA developer, you're like, ooh, Chinese characters for free. I don't have to ship extra images in my application. And these are actually Silverlight sliders down here that control the color. And they're actually data bound. You can bind values between XNA and Silverlight. So that's, if you're doing any Silverlight and XNA, that's a huge boon for you guys. Performance. I know some of you don't think we have the best performance, and we've addressed that. List box scrolling is one of the big points of concern. There were some press articles saying, the scrolling is buttery smooth in the main like the start menu, but what about the Silverlight applications? What about your basic IMDb? They were good, and the developers that wrote those did some really good tricks to make them smooth. But we want to do a better job of making the out-of-box experience just completely solid. So we've worked with list box scrolling, and the way we did that is today we have a UI thread where all your UI happens. We have the render thread I talked about, where you actually do all your texture composition. Well, now we also have an input thread. This input thread, when your finger goes down, it says, hey, I'm getting input. And then we take all the input messages and we funnel them into just that one thread. All it does is handle input, moving back and forth. And that's on a different thread. So now your UI, your data binding, and all your application logic, all that heavy lifting that used to get in the way of input is now separate. So now your scrolling is much smoother. And I can show you a quick little example of that. Like I said, memory working set, that's been greatly reduced, anywhere from 20 to 30%. Off-thread image decode. This is another way we've improved performance. By default, in a Mango application, when you set the source on an image, that image is going to be decoded on a background thread. This is important because for some things where your images used to sort of appear right away, like basically your entire UI would be blank and then everything would come in. Now with Mango apps, your text is going to come in, all your basic data binding is going to come in, and then your image may pop in a few milliseconds later. That's because before we would block the UI thread as we decoded that image. We're doing it on a separate thread now. So the classic example of a list with thumbnails, that's much more responsive now, but those images will sort of pop in as they're available. It makes your interactivity much more responsive. It makes for a better experience. But something to watch out for as you're doing your applications. One gotcha in this area is in a panorama. It's a huge image in the background usually. And often you don't want that to pop in. That's sort of jarring. So we're adding to the templates, but for anyone that does any ahead of the curve type of development, we're adding a new type of background creation enum, or a new bitmap create option called background creation. When you clear that flag, we go old school. We decode on the UI thread so your images don't pop in as much. But that doesn't mean the entire UI thread pauses while the image comes in. Something to watch out for. It's a subtle thing that we're doing. And then we have also just some targeted improvements. We're trying to make data binding faster. We're trying to make everything that you touch in the system that has a large perf overhead, make that faster. Now, one thing I don't have a slide for, but I do want to touch on because I get asked about this a lot, is how do my apps work between what ships today and Mango? And that's the whole slide-worthy section I want to cover. So Silverlight applications, when they get deployed, when what we call 7.0 apps come to your phone, they're quirked. So even though you might be running Mango on your phone, we're running in quirks mode. We're saying we're using the Silverlight 4 code path. We have all those great things, but you know what? A 7.0 app needs to work like a 7.0 app needs to work like a 7.0 app. People shouldn't get all of a sudden this weird jarring behavior. So for a lot of these behaviors, except for a few exceptions, we've quirked them. Now, if you take that exact same application and recompile it as a Mango application, no code change, just recompile it, your application may start behaving differently. Things like the web client returning on a background thread. Things like when your image gets decoded. Things, some of these various little changes I've talked about. Those will start coming on different threads, or you'll have different results. It's important to watch out for. So as you're upgrading your applications or making that decision on when to jump from a 7.0 to a Mango, just keep that in mind. And when we release, we'll have a big list of everything we've quirked and said, hey, this is a little bit different, or this will change if you recompile 7.1. Oh, we're not quite ready for that one, because I want to show off list box scrolling. I'm going to grab my retail device here. Just because I'm so proud of this, and we did work so very hard on it. Is anyone here a Foursquare user, Fourth and Mayor? Well, this application is just a 7.0 application, and I swore I wouldn't actually sort of talk about Jeff Wilcox, who wrote this application, and sort of inflate his ego a little bit more, since it's one of the larger applications in the marketplace. But, I have to give him props. So here it is a current shipping device. As you can see, it's a little bit choppy. I put my finger down. It doesn't stop quite, exactly the same time. I move that away, come back over here, let that load up. As you can see, I scroll, my finger comes down, and it stops instantly. Now, this is one of those quirks I was talking about. This is a 7.0 application, not recompiled, and you're still getting smooth scrolling. We've done that on purpose to make sure that even applications that are running today without users having to do anything will get these huge performance improvements as soon as they get a Mango update. So you don't have to recompile. That's a trade-off we're making. Usually you want to quirk everything. Even if you're fixing a bug, you still want a 7.0 application to crash the same way. Because as developers, you end up coding around those crashes. If we change that behavior on you, your applications break in strange ways. So that is Silverlight on Windows Phone, coming to you in Mango whenever Mango drops. I know we get that question a lot. That question I won't answer. But I will answer every other question about Silverlight in Mango. Thanks for coming, guys. So, well, everyone knows this is QA. I do want to get to this slide so you guys can read it while you're doing QA. And Oh, sorry, I just realized I didn't tell everyone that there is a chance to win a Windows Phone for everyone that might be sneaking out that doesn't have a Windows Phone. So it's the classic, you answer a question, you get a phone. And you'll get the phone today. It's not entering into a raffle for it. And if you answer the question correctly, I will give you this phone. So who wants to play? A few of you? Okay, those are my contenders right there. So the question is, and I see someone lingering at the door. I know they want it. So the question is, I talked about scalars. And there's really three things, actually four. There's four things that will kick video out of scalar mode. Do you guys remember what those four things are? I got the front in blue. Excuse me? Opacity. Yeah. Transforms. Okay. There's a fourth. Does anyone know the fourth? I'll give you a few more seconds. Dun, 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 dun. Red shirt. Perfect. You nailed it. Right line, screen line, opacity transformations. You are the proud winner of a green ticket that says, congratulations, you have won a phone. Come see me afterwards, and it's all yours. Now, Q&A. Any questions? None? That's awesome. Oh, there's one right there.
These aren't, oh, this one's live.
Oh, I'll let that gentleman go first, though. He was right up there. Oh.
About like style triggers and other kind of data triggers.
So the question is about triggers and style triggers, which are more of a WPF concept. That is not for Mango. So pretty much if it's in Silverlight 4 around data binding and triggers and all that, then we get it for Mango, but otherwise we don't.
So is there any...
So are there any plans for that, for triggering in the future? Right now, how do I phrase it? There are many asks for the phone. That's lower on the list of asks. So we want to get through everything people request, but that's just been a lower on that list. Excuse me? You crash in the designer a lot? That's bad.
Yeah.
So if you...
And it's because triggers don't work. So I have to do other things to change styles based on data.
Oh, that's okay. So what I'll do is take that information and file some bugs on that, because the designer should not crash. We want a stable. Visual Studio is our flagship product, so we definitely don't want that to crash. So I'll go file those bugs. Thanks.
In the keynote, they showed the phone connected to the computer, kind of in reverse of what you were doing, where their actions on the phone displayed on the computer. So I'm curious.
So basically the question is, yep, it's video out. And I can tell you that it is not coming to a phone near you. There are restrictions. Obviously, technically it works, but there are restrictions beyond that we can't address for Mango.
One other related question was, I also noticed that as they were typing on a real keyboard, those keyboard inputs showed up in the emulator.
So that's a great question. As you type on the keyboard, the keys actually end up in the emulator. You can actually do that today, but you have to use, it's the least discoverable feature out there. You have to do, I believe, page up or page down. That actually dismisses the SIP, the keyboard. Once that's gone, you're in hardware keyboard mode. You're simulating as if someone slid out their keyboard. At that point, you can type all day. Oh, one way back there.
Yeah, I was wondering, can you apply the video brush to anything other than a rectangle?
Anything that you can apply a brush to, you can apply the video brush to.
Okay.
Any other questions? Concerns? Rants? I'll take it all.
From the programmer's perspective, the application bar is very bizarre. Are there any fixes for that?
So As far as the application bar, I can't directly address it. I go find Peter Torr's talk. Peter Torr would be a great guy to ask about application bar and what they're doing around it. One thing that we did bring in Silverlight 4 is the ability to bind to a dependency object. That was one of the issues with application bar before, as those were all DOs and they were difficult to bind to. So I hope they're making it better.
Are there any changes with the back stack, the tombstoning, any improvements or changes there, or any way to hit I don't know if everybody's OCD like I am, but hitting the back button 20, 30 times until you finally unravel the whole stack. I know the intent was that you never unravel the whole stack, but any sort of task switching or anything like that in this next upcoming release?
So the question is around, navigation improvements. And when I hear that question, I usually hear two different things. One of them is, in my own application, I have people navigate 12 pages deep. I want to get them back home. And then when they hit back again, I don't want them to go to page 12. When they go back to a certain point, I want to reset the stack. So when they hit back, they'll back out of the application. I'd ask Peter Torr about that one. Go to his session, find it. He can tell you all about navigation changes. The other aspect of that question is as a task switcher. You're going between multiple applications. You'll be 12 pages deep in one, you'll back, and you want to get to the second to last app. To get to that application, you want something like task switching. And that's where fast application switching comes in. And we are bringing fast application switching and an ability to actually get to those different tasks. So there will be improvements in how you can actually get to your different applications. Any other questions? All right. Well, thanks everyone for coming. Fill out the evaluation forms. Let us know what we can do better. And have a great Tech Ed.